Hi, I'm Mr. Simons, and in this video I want to give you a little bit of advice for your extended response essays in the New South Wales Economics HSC, which is coming up soon depending on when you're watching this video. In your essay, if you are asked to discuss the Australian economy, current and past conditions, the temptation will be to focus on COVID-19. The temptation will be to focus on what is happening right now in terms of the impact of the coronavirus on the Australian economy, and also in terms of the government's policy responses, so looking at monetary and fiscal policy. But here's my suggestion to you. Don't fall into the trap of recency bias. Now, recency bias is where we place more weight and importance on events that have happened more recently than events that have happened a longer time ago. So we attribute more importance to events the closer they're happening to the current time period. So we might look at COVID-19 and think, well, this is the defining thing for the Australian economy in terms of our essay responses. But what I'd encourage you to do is to take a 20-year view rather than a 12-month view. What I mean by this is if you are asked to discuss, assess, evaluate, whatever, the Australian economy, that you take a much longer time frame. Because if you focus on COVID-19, yes, it's relevant, yes, it's happening right now, and yes, it is having an effect on the Australian economy, but it's not the whole story in terms of the Australian economic experience. That if we think about the time period from 2000 to 2020, we have a number of different events that we can look at which convey a much deeper and broader understanding of the Australian economy. So if we think about this 20-year time period, we can divide it into a number of different sub-periods that you can then focus on and have that ready to roll in terms of your extended responses. From the year 2000 to 2008, the mining boom Mark I, China's insatiable demand for Australia's exports, boosting Australia's economic growth and inflation, and leading to a rise in cash rate. Then 2008, 2009, global financial crisis, Australia's economic growth slows, but not in recession. Cash rate is falling, unemployment is rising, expansionary fiscal policy. Then sort of like 2010-ish to around about 2014, we have the mining boom Mark II. So the worst of the GFC has passed, not totally gone, but the worst. And so China's demand resumes, global growth starts to pick up a bit, Australian economy doing much better, and also the cash rate starting to rise to keep inflation low. Then sort of 2015 to 2019-ish, 2014 to 2019, there's not something I would specifically focus on in this time period. But what I would talk about is the fact that Australia's inflation rate is stubbornly low, that it remains below the RBA's target band of 2 to 3% over the course of the business cycle. So the cash rate continues to fall, but inflation and economic growth is pretty subdued. And then you can get into COVID. So during COVID, we've got a global pandemic. Australia enters recession. Unemployment is rising. The government is spending lots of money as part of expansionary fiscal policy to get the economy going, to try and stabilize and reduce the level of unemployment. Also, you've got expansionary monetary continuing and overall global growth falling off a cliff. If you are asked to discuss the Australian economy, don't be COVID-centric. Don't just focus on what is happening right now, and don't fall into the trap of recency bias. Take that 20-year and not a 12-month view of the Australian economy. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this gives you a bit of advice and guidance in terms of those critical extended responses. Questions, put them in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.